Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really critical safety update for one of the world's most common regional aircraft, the ATR. And we're looking at a risk that pops up not in the sky, but when the plane is supposed to be safely on the ground.
So let me start with a question that might sound a little strange. Could an aircraft actually be at its most vulnerable when it's just sitting on the tarmac? It feels wrong, right? But as we're about to see, with the kind of extreme weather we're getting now, that whole equation is changing.
And that brings us right to this new proposed airworthiness directive from Europe's Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. It was issued on September 15, 2025, and it's aimed squarely at a serious and, frankly, underestimated threat that high winds pose to these parked aircraft.
Now, to really get what's going on, we first have to be on the same page about mooring. All it is, really, is the process of tying an aircraft down with ropes or chains. You do it to keep strong winds from pushing it around, or, worse. It's a totally standard, really important procedure you see at airports all over the world.
Okay, so here's where things get interesting. A recent safety review found that the established, tried-and-true mooring procedures for the entire ATR fleet, well, they just weren't designed for the kind of extreme wind gusts we see today. The very procedure that's supposed to protect the plane could actually be its biggest weakness.
So now let's get into the nitty-gritty, the engineering behind this problem. We're going to see exactly how these incredible wind forces get funneled through the airframe and why the landing gear ends up being this unintended weak link in the whole chain.
You can think of it like a dangerous domino effect. A huge gust of wind slams into the side of the plane. That's a massive surface area, right? And all of that incredible force has to go somewhere. It gets channeled down through the landing gear and into just a few small but absolutely critical connection points, the mooring lugs.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The potential consequences are spelled out right here in the directive. We are talking about damage that could lead to losing control of the plane while it's taxiing, or even worse, seriously injuring ground personnel who are working nearby.
So here's the bottom line. This isn't just about a bent piece of metal. A failure of these little mooring lugs could have major operational and, more importantly, human safety impacts, causing problems long after the storm has actually passed.
And you might be wondering, okay, so how many planes are we talking about here? Well, the scope of this issue is huge. This is not a problem for just a handful of aircraft. It affects a massive number of planes operating in literally every corner of the globe.
And let's be absolutely crystal clear on this. This isn't for a specific production run or a certain model year. Nope. This proposed directive applies to every single ATR 42 and 72 ever built, from the oldest ones still flying to the brand new ones rolling off the assembly line right now. Okay, so that's the problem. The good news? The manufacturer ATR has already been on top of this. They've developed a solution, and now EASA is proposing to make it mandatory for everybody, to make sure there's one uniform standard of safety across the entire fleet.
And the solution itself is actually pretty simple, but it's a vital shift. On the one hand, you have the old, risky procedures which will be completely prohibited. On the other, you have the new, required procedure from an updated manual. And the biggest difference? A very clear, very strict wind limit.
65 knots. That's the number to remember here. The new procedure is only certified to be used in winds up to this speed. It gives ground crews a clear, no-questions-asked safety boundary. So if the forecast calls for winds stronger than 65 knots, you have to do something else, like maybe move the plane into a hangar.
Okay, so what does all this actually mean in the real world? For the people who fly and fix these planes every single day. Let's break down what this change means for the different teams that are involved.
Well, if you're looking at it from a safety perspective, this is a huge win. It's a major risk reduction. For the operations folks, it's a pretty straightforward procedural update. And from a business standpoint, the actual financial cost is low. But it does mean there needs to be an immediate fleet-wide review to make sure everyone's on board.
Now, something that's really important to remember is that this is a proposed directive. And what that means is that it has to go through a specific regulatory process, which includes a period for public comment, before it becomes a final binding rule.
So here are the key dates to watch. The proposal came out on September 15th, 2025. The really crucial deadline for anyone in the aviation industry to give their feedback is October 13th, 2025. After that, ESAA will go through all the comments and then issue the final directive with a date for when it officially takes effect. And this right here, this is basically a call to action. EASA is actively asking the experts out there, the engineers, the maintenance managers, the safety officers, to weigh in.
This whole consultation process is designed to make sure the final rule is not just as safe as possible, but as practical as possible too.
When you really boil it all down, this whole case is a powerful reminder that in aviation, being vigilant on the ground is every bit as critical as being vigilant in the air. I mean, this was a simple mooring procedure done the same way for years that was hiding a huge growing risk. It really makes you wonder, what other simple assumptions are out there that need a second look?